I am calling the public hearing to order. This is, good evening. I am Mayor Sherry Cantor. I just want to make sure actually that Jen is all set. Wait for 1 minute.
We are ready.
Great, thank you. Good evening. I am Mayor Sherry Cantor, and I'd like to call to order tonight's virtual public hearing on the ordinance establishing a 9-month moratorium on certain uses not supportive of transit-oriented development. Because in-person attendance at public meetings is likely to increase the risk of transmission of COVID-19, this hearing is being conducted virtually and in accordance with Governor Lamont's public health and civil preparedness orders. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll?
Ms. Blanks?
Present.
Ms. Cantor?
Here.
Mr. Davidoff?
Here.
Ms. Fay?
Present.
Mr. Gold?
Here.
Ms. Kerrigan?
Here.
Mr. Sweeney? Mr. Sweeney? Mr. Winograd?
Here.
Mr. Williams? And I did not hear Mr. Sweeney.
Here.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and for the chorus, Liam. I just also want to give a special shout out, and I will again, to Councillor Blanks. It is her birthday today, so thank you for being here and happy birthday to a beautiful person inside and out. Okay, this is Mayor Cantor again. Because of the virtual format of this hearing, there are some special rules and procedures that I need to follow before I begin. I would like to start with a brief overview of this process. Instructions on how to participate are available in the legal notice, which is posted on the town's website and published in the Hartford Courant. All participants must identify themselves by name and title every time they speak. And I just want to thank everybody. This is the first time from a council meeting that we have done this virtual format for speakers, and previous speakers have been just by audio only. So this is a new process for us, and I want to thank you for your patience ahead of time if there are any glitches. We have practiced. We had actually had a trial run with a public meeting, but not from town council. So again, I appreciate your patience. We will start with a presentation by town staff. Mr. Hart.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt Hart, Town Manager. Good evening, Council and all of our guests. Appreciate the opportunity to make this presentation regarding the proposed 9-month moratorium on certain uses not supportive of transit-oriented development. Town Planner Todd DeMay will join me in making this brief presentation, and he has a few slides he would like to share with you. The purpose of the moratorium is to provide staff, the council, Town Planning and Zoning Commission, and other key stakeholders with the time to work collaboratively on the development of possible new zoning regulations that are designed or would be designed to promote transit-oriented development in a segment of the new Park Avenue corridor. The moratorium is limited in scope to lots in a business or industrial zoning district located within a quarter mile of either the Elmwood or the Flatbush CT Fast Track stations. Mr. DeMay will elaborate on the scope in just a few minutes. Why is the moratorium considered important? Without it in place, an existing owner or a new buyer could sell and convert a key property to a use that is not consistent with transit-oriented development. Since 2015, the town has sought to promote transit-oriented development in this corridor, given its proximity to Connecticut Fast Track and the Hartford rail lines. As Mr. DeMay will explain, transit-oriented development is designed to promote a balance or a mix of compatible uses, such as residential, commercial, and retail uses in a walkable, pedestrian-friendly environment in close proximity to public transportation. Chapter 5 of the town's recently adopted Plan of Conservation Development sets out the town's transportation-related goals, including a specific recommendation to consider transit-oriented development zoning for the new park corridor. The town has received $3.5 million in grant funding to finance complete streets infrastructure improvements along New Park from the intersection with New Britain Avenue east to Oakwood Avenue. Through you, Mayor, I would now like to turn to Mr. Dumais to explain the key principles of transit-oriented development as well as the details of the proposed moratorium. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Mr. Hart. For the record, Todd Dumais, Town Planner. Hopefully the topic of transit-oriented development should not be new for the council. It has been the focus of several of your recent planning studies and initiatives, including, as Mr. Hart mentioned, the 2020-2030 Plan of Conservation and Development. However, I don't want to take your knowledge for granted, because I think it is important to review the concept for any members of the public watching or participating in this hearing that might not be familiar with it. Transit-oriented development is relatively high-density mixed-use development typology located within a short walk, most typically considered a 5 to 10 minute or quarter mile to half-mile walk of a fixed transit station. More specifically, it is pedestrian-oriented, compact development that contains a mix of residential, office, retail, or other commercial use. Characteristics for TOD include mixed use, allowing people to live, work, and play in one district or neighborhood. Density, minimum residential density to support TOD of 12 to 15 units per acre. High quality pedestrian environment. Amenities that encourage walking between transit. Mixes of uses as well as adjacent neighborhoods. A unique sense of place. Land use is a built environment that combine and create attractive and identifiable districts, and typically low parking.
Excuse me, Mr. Dumais, I just want to check, Gerida, are you getting, is the audio a little off for Mr. Dumais? Are you getting that, or is it just me?
It is, Mayor. It is for me, Matt Hart.
Okay. Mr. Dumais, it's slow and then it goes fast, and it's hard to understand. I feel like I'm missing every third word. So I don't know if you want to try. I don't know if there's anything you can do to help, but I'm not sure.
Let me pause it and see if I can correct it.
Okay, I just want you to be aware. Yeah.
You may need to do audio on one line, Mayor, and video on another.
Yes, this hits personal connection.
He's more technically savvy than most of us, so I trust that he will figure out a way. Mr. Dumais, I don't know if you can hear me, but when you're ready, you just let us know.
Madam Mayor, let me start again. Can I get some sort of indication if my audio is coming in better this time?
That is so much clearer. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, so if you don't mind just rewinding a little bit, that would be really helpful. Thank you. Mr. Dumais, Tom, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. The topic of transit-oriented development should not be new for the council. as it was the central focus of several of your recent planning studies and initiatives, including the 2020-2030 Plan of Conservation and Development. However, for any members of the public watching that are unfamiliar with the term, I do feel it's important that we review what is TOD. Transit-oriented development is relatively high-density, mixed-use development typology that is located within a short walk, typically 5 to 10 minutes from a fixed transit node. That 5 to 10-minute walk is often referred to as a quarter mile. Looks like I might be having an audio issue again.
Yeah, it sounds about the same. I'm sorry, a little clearer, but not much. And once you started, it started to get choppy again. So, and I'm getting feedback from the website. So, are you on a phone? Did you try calling in via phone or?
No, I'm plugged directly into the town's internet system, so shouldn't be an issue. I'll call in. Give me a moment.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, if I could try audio without my video feed on as one last attempt before I go to the phone, I think this might work.
Okay, let's give it a try. That whatever you said was very clear. Hopefully, we'll continue. Thank you, Mr.
Madam
Dume.
Mayor, would you like me to start over?
My mute button's a little slow. You can start from where you paused about TOD, reviewing the TOD. That would be fine. Thank you.
Transit-oriented development is a relatively high-density, mixed-use development typology located within a short walk, typically a 5 to 10-minute walkshed or quarter to half mile of fixed transit stations. More specifically, it's pedestrian-oriented and compact development that contains a mix of residential, office, retail, and other commercial use. Its characteristics include mix of use allowing people to live, work, play in one district and neighborhood. Density, typically a minimum residential density of 12 to 15 units an acre, if not higher. A high-quality pedestrian environment that combines pedestrian amenities that encourage walking between transit and the mix of uses, as well as adjacent neighborhoods. A sense of place due to the land uses and built environment that combine to create attractive and identifiable districts. And most typically, low parking requirements due to the proximity of transit and the walkability of the neighborhoods. The success of TOD is dependent on the degree in which its land use composition, streetscape design, and urban form all allow the strong connections between the community and the local transit access. To date, much of the town's focus outside of its planning efforts have been on infrastructure. As Mr. Hart indicated, the town has been successful in securing several $1 million of grant funding to further enhance the New Park Avenue corridor through a complete streets improvement project. Consistent with the Plan of Conservation Development, now is an appropriate time to review the zoning within the corridor. The moratorium, the details of which I'll explain in a moment, is the first step in what we will hope will be a collaborative process to engage property and business owners along New Park Avenue and New Britain Avenue, as the town seeks to promote and foster unique opportunities for transit-oriented mixed-use development around the CT fast track stations, with the goal of enhancing the district by complementing the existing commercial and industrial businesses along this important and unique area of town. Since this is a hearing on zoning moratorium, I believe it would be useful to discuss the general purpose of zoning. Broadly speaking, the town's zoning ordinance guides the growth and development of the town of West Hartford in accordance with the plan of development to promote beneficial and convenient relationships among residential, commercial, industrial, and public areas within town, while considering the suitability of each areas for such uses as indicated by their existing conditions, trends in population, mode of living, transportation, and the future needs of the various types of development. Zoning seeks to achieve this through many things, including the minimization of conflicts among land uses and buildings, and to bring about the gradual conformity of the uses of land and buildings throughout the town to the POCD. As you are all aware, the town is divided into multiple zoning districts. Within each district, there are different standards that control the size, layout, intensity of development, and use. With respect to use, all districts have an established set of permitted uses. The zoning moratorium applies to a limited number of districts and a limited number of those uses. So now would be a good time for me to review the construct of the moratorium. As Mr. Hart indicated earlier, the moratorium is structured to only apply in a very narrowly limited area of town and a limited area within 2 zoning districts. It applies to any lots that are in business or industrial zoning districts that are within 1/4 mile of either the Elmwood or Flatbush Fast Track station, and they must have frontage on one of the following streets: Darcy Street, Flatbush Avenue, Jefferson Avenue, New Britain Avenue, New Park Avenue, Prospect Avenue, or South Street. The uses that are identified within the moratorium as not being supportive of transit-oriented development include car wash facilities, contractors' yards, drive-in facilities with drive-up windows that are accessory to bank, retail, restaurant, or pharmacy, a junkyard, kennels, motor vehicle sales, service, repair, and gasoline stations, nurseries or greenhouses, outdoor storage of material and equipment, passenger automobile rental agencies, vehicle-intensive businesses, and wholesale business and storage warehouses. Now I will attempt to share a screen that depicts that ordinance graphically so we can all have a better idea of its proposed and potential impact. Just by a nod of heads or thumbs up, everyone can see my screen. This first map,
Yes, we can. Thank you.
thank you, Madam Mayor. This first map is a map that I've labeled potentially impacted properties around the Flatbush station. The large red, in the center, the green square, is the Flatbush CT Fast Track station. The red ring around that station is the 1/4 mile distance indicated in the ordinance. The properties that are highlighted in either light orange or dark orange are properties that meet the location or other criteria within the ordinance. They're on either Prospect, Flatbush, New Park, Darcy, or Jefferson, and all of those properties are zoned commercial and or industrial. The properties in light orange are potentially impacted, meaning that they don't currently have a use identified in the moratorium. The properties in dark orange are impacted by the moratorium in that they contain one of those 11 enumerated and stated uses. I can walk us all through those. 503 New Park, that's West Hartford Place. So within that parcel is BJ's, Home Depot, Aldi, and Chick-fil-A. There's a drive-through restaurant facility, and there's also a gasoline service filling station within the BJ's. The other properties are all auto related with one exception. So 528, 522, those are automobile repair or service stations. These properties right in the center of the map across from the Flatbush CT Fast Track station, although they're indicated by 3, they're actually all 471. That is the Cumberland Farms gas station. 628, 449, and 411, those are all automobile repair stations. 456 is another gas station, and 450 is a mixed-use retail that also includes a drive-through that's a Dunkin' Donuts. So that constitutes the northern end of this proposed moratorium. I'll switch now to the portion of the moratorium that generally encompasses the Elmwood CT Fast Track station. Again, for point of reference and orientation, the green in the middle of this map is the Elmwood CT Fast Track station. The red ring around that is the quarter-mile distance from that station. And then any of the properties identified in light orange are potentially impacted in that they meet the location standard of being a quarter mile, they're zoned industrial or commercial, and they're on one of the qualifying streets. In this instance, New Britain Avenue, New Park Avenue, and South Street. Again, the properties in orange contain uses that are outlined in the moratorium. I'll quickly walk through those once again. Up at the northern end of the screen here, 580, that's a self-storage facility. 604 contains a bridal shop on the front side of the property, but an auto repair dealer on the back side of the property. 631 has a retail component, but it also has outdoor storage of material and equipment. 1072 and 1056, those are both auto repair stations. 1031 and number 27, that is the site of the former Bally's Fitness. There is an approved site plan for self-storage at both of those locations. It's actually under construction or in various states of construction as we speak. Number 1, New Britain Avenue, that's another gas station. And then the bulk of all of the rest of these along New Britain Avenue are either automobile dealerships, auto repair stations of some sort, a car wash facility, or other auto-oriented uses identified in the ordinance. The one outlier that's barely touched in the moratorium at 974 was a Dunkin' Donuts with a drive-through facility that is currently closed. I'm going to stop sharing right now for a moment. So hopefully those two maps provided some context about the potential impact or actual impact within the district as outlined in the moratorium. I would point out for the record, there does seem to be some confusion about the listed uses within the moratorium within the broader public and or identified in written correspondence to the council. In particular, there was some stated opposition from the owner of the Raymore and Flanagan parcel that drew attention to this ordinance potentially impacting a whole series of uses that they classified as vehicle-intensive business uses. They said that in their letter, many important community-enhancing uses such as fitness centers, small format grocers, family entertainment uses, medical and doctors' uses would be impacted by this proposed moratorium. I would like to state for the record that is not true. Vehicle-intensive uses or vehicle-intensive business is a defined use in our zoning. And I think it's important to review what that use is. It's a business that the primary purpose of which is to provide services to the public involving vehicles or mechanical equipment off the business premise, such as transport, hauling, common freight carriers, or construction, and involves the parking of those vehicles on the business premise during non-business hours. They typically might materialize as a vehicle fleet yard, a taxi cab company, a delivery service, or freight hauling company. It is not the uses that were identified in that letter that went to the council from the Council of Raymore and Flanagan. I just wanted to clarify that for the record. With that, Madam Mayor, that concludes my presentation of the ordinance, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dumais. I would like to describe the rest of the process, and then we will probably go to questions. I should have done this before, but after we will go to public comment in just a minute, and then town staff will have time to answer those questions. So we will not be doing interactive. We will receive the public comment, and then staff can respond to the questions that they hear or concerns that they hear. Members of the council at that point will also have the opportunity to ask questions of town staff. And I will call on you right now in alphabetical order. Each member of the council will also have 5 minutes to ask questions. The public will have 3 minutes. That's our standard, unless you represent a group, in which case you will have 5 minutes to speak. And if there is an answer that the town staff has and councilors have not finished, then I'll use discretion in extending this. Also, everything needs to go through the chair, and as we said before, you do need to identify yourself. Our councilors, most of you are very familiar with this process now, but people following on either on the internet or on the television, it's really important that you state your name and your title. And although it feels rigid and awkward, this is really the best way for people to follow. With regard to the public comment section, I want to emphasize that this is only intended for members of the public who actively wish to participate and provide comments. If you're on the phone and you want to listen to this and not participate, please hang up and watch on the internet or on WHCI or Comcast Channel 5 or Frontier Channel 6098. This is a little cumbersome for us to manage with people that are on but don't want to participate. So again, if you are on and you don't want to participate, we would encourage you to hang up your phone, to hang up now and end the video connection and watch and listen on TV or on the internet. And I'll take just one moment for anybody that is in that position right now. Okay, we will start with the public comment portion, and this will be monitored by Jerida, and I will have coordination with the town clerk, who will be keeping time, although Essie, your video is not on for me right now, and I don't know whether that's my internet or you're not on, so you may have to text me timing. So, okay, so we will start, Jerida, moderator, we will start with the, well, let me just go through for one more minute. We have afforded the public the opportunity to comment either in writing or live on phone or video. Written comments we have received, and they are published on the town's website. We all have received copies of the written comments that have been submitted. I will ask the clerk to please read into the record the names of persons who submitted the written comment. And again, Essie, I don't see you, but if you could read those in now, that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Mark Greenstein from 1106 Feineman Road, received on November 20th. David Schumaleski, 485 New Park Avenue, received on November 24th. Christopher Conway, on behalf of the West Hartford Chamber, received on November 24th. And Jonathan Ream, Raymore and Flanagan Corp Council, received on November 24th. Those are the only 4 we've received to date.
Thank you, Ms. Lebrow. And so now we will move into the live comments. Again, there may be some members on the phone line, but if you want to comment, and you please follow the instructions on the legal notice, which is available on the government page of the town's website, meetings and agenda. So out of respect for everyone who wishes to speak, speakers again should be brief and concise. Try not to repeat something that someone else has already said. Again, you will be limited to 3 minutes, and you must state and spell your name and address. And again, remember, if you're on the phone and you don't want to speak, bye-bye, hang up. So now we will go through the moderator and monitor. And it's hard for me to tell how many people, so I apologize. I don't know if we're dealing with a handful or quite a number. So moderator will announce the last 2 digits of a phone number, and the person who is calling in with that number may unmute his or her phone by pressing *6. Okay, so to unmute your phone, you will be identified by the last 2 digits of your phone number, and you will unmute by pressing *6, restate your name, provide your address, deliver your comments or questions. The moderator will proceed until all members of the public who have called in have the opportunity to speak, and then we will go to the members participating by video. The moderator will announce the person's name. We have that on the video, so we will have your name, and that person may unmute his or her device, restate his or her name, and provide your address, and then deliver comments or questions. Once all of those participants have provided comment, the moderator will turn the meeting back over to me, and we will continue with the remaining agenda items. If the moderator unmutes a line and doesn't hear a voice after the prompt, the phone line will be removed from the hearing. And if you want to, please call back. If you called in and are also streaming, we would hear an echo. So you must turn off your other devices, and just be on either what you're talking into or audio wise on your computer. So out of respect, again, for everybody, briefness. But get your point across. We want to hear from you. Finally, all comments must be germane to the hearing. Be respectful. Anything that we don't, think is disrespectful, offensive, or threatening will not be tolerated, and we will have the ability to hang up to stop that train. So if the violation is egregious, again, you will be muted immediately. Just fair warning. I'm sure nobody on this was planning to do that. So, Madam Moderator, let's start with the call-in participants. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am now going to unmute phone number ending in 21. Please press *6 to unmute your line. Phone number ending in numbers 21, please press *6 to unmute your line. Okay, let's move on. I believe he or she is the only call. So now we're going to move on to the video portion of the public portion, and I will ask Rick Liftig to unmute and start his public comment.
I think you're on mute, Rick. I'm not sure, but
it's not
you.
unmuting.
Yeah,
there we go. You can hear me now.
Okay, name and your address.
Yeah. Good evening. My name is Rick Liftig. I live at 75 Fox Ridge Road. I'm a business owner in Elmwood and president of the Elmwood Business Association. I'd like to provide a little historical perspective to this moratorium based on our experiences of roughly 20 years ago. Roughly 20 years ago, significant properties in Elmwood were up for sale, and their disposition was likely to affect the area for the next 30 to 50 years. A moratorium on development was enacted in order to allow time for a committee to craft the traditional neighborhood design ordinance. In theory, the TND was a great accomplishment. It protected the neighborhood and provided guidelines about how we wanted the area to look in 50 years. But in practice, the TND has never been used. The 50% trigger created a big loophole, and there were no incentives to voluntarily comply. Any legislation resulting from this moratorium needs to avoid these errors. These opportunities to direct change only come once every 20 or 30 years. Zoning and development ideas are constantly changing, as are the demographics of our town and our neighboring capital city. Transit-oriented development is a current trend, but this is changing by the moment. The pandemic has shown us that commuting to work may eventually become a quaint part of history. So development around transit stations needs to be aimed at permanence and at structures and institutions that are likely to be around for the next 50 and 100 years. Development around transit stations is going to spill over the line to Hartford, which benefits both towns. Ergo, Hartford needs to be brought into these discussions also. A transit line can become a divider or a uniter. The New Park corridor is essentially a blank slate, and it's a terrific opportunity to create destinations and community. But one last thought. As I mentioned, the TND ordinance was well meant, but has never been put into practice. Maybe we have to revisit the ordinances on a regular basis, much as we do with the POCD. Things change, habits change. An ordinance written in 2020 may be irrelevant in 2030 and a dinosaur by 2040. So most important, there comes a time when you need to offer incentives and work with both property owners and residents sitting around the table. It's not exactly the way business has been done in the past, but in a fully developed town like West Hartford, there are only a few blank slates remaining, and we have to be very wise about how we use each one of them. So I'm in favor of this moratorium, and I hope coming out of this, we can get some very good legislation that does have incentives for the development to take place, unlike the TND. And I want to thank you for your time and wish you all a wonderful holiday.
Thank you, Mr. Liftig. Appreciate it. And back to you, Madam Moderator.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We are now going to go ahead and unmute David Schumaleski. I apologize if I mispronounced your name.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks. David Schumaleski. I'm the owner of Direct Line Media at 485 New Park Avenue. I'm also the president of the Design District of West Hartford. I submitted a letter earlier today that kind of states our position. I'd be happy to read that if you all want to read it, but it's attached, so I find that may be a waste of time. I do want to comment a little bit on some of Mr. Dumas's remarks. One that sort of stuck out at me was the gradual conformity. That term I haven't heard before, and we've been in talks a little bit back and forth trying to get a better handle on what's going to happen to the New Park corridor. Gradual conformity, I read this as, well, first of all, let me back up a little bit. You know, I started my office down there a couple of years ago, and I'm very happy to be down in that area. It's very industrial, it's very eclectic, and it's just very diverse, and that's one of the reasons I moved down there. And it is a very up and coming, and it's a very popular part of town. And that's another reason why I started my business down in that area. And the reason I'm part of the design district is because it's a great group of individuals who have been in business for quite a long time. And I can stand to learn a lot from these folks. Anyway, back to gradual conformity. I read that as conforming Elmwood and in particular Design District in our part of town into more of West Hartford is like the center and Blueback. Not that there's anything wrong with the center of West Hartford or Blueback Square for that matter. But the New Park Avenue corridor is a very different part of town, and it's very industrial. And there's a lot of businesses down there that serve the greater part of West Hartford, such as landscapers and oil companies and so on and so forth, that need outdoor storage facilities, etc., etc. So I find that the term gradual conformity, this is the first time I've heard of it. It just makes me a little bit nervous. Moving on, not to waste any time. The other part was I know there's a certain fear of a large organizations moving in self-storage and things of that sort. And I think in the town's effort to not have these organizations move in, these big box stores or what have you move in storage facilities, I think they may have overlooked some of the smaller businesses. For instance, the outdoor storage, is that a yes or no if there's a retail component? So if there's a retail component, can somebody have outdoor storage of some significance? I refer to, Butler Power Equipment and those types of businesses. And there's no nurseries down in our part of the town, but if a nursery wanted to move in there with greenhouses and such, would they be allowed if they had a retail component? We did discuss that. I don't know if I have a clear answer on that. So, but anyway, those are my comments. I thank you very much for listening, and I wish you all a very happy holiday and happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you, David. Appreciate your comments as well. Madam Moderator, next speaker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to go ahead now and unmute Scott Milnamau. And I do apologize if I am misspelling some of these names. Mispronouncing.
Scott, Mr. Milnamo, I can't see you, so I don't know, but we can't hear you. I don't know if you're on mute.
Madam Mayor, I have been sending him requests to unmute. If he is not going to speak, we have no other public comments. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize, Mr. Conway. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
No problem. Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, and town staff. For the record, my name is Christopher Conway, and I am here in my capacity as the Executive Director of the West Hartford Chamber of Commerce, 948 Farmington Avenue. I did also submit a letter, which, unlike my friend Dave, I am going to read, but I just wanted to give a little bit of perspective on where this letter came from. The Chamber, through its Economic Development Committee, was approached by some concerned members of the Design District. The Design District, as an organization, is a member of the Chamber of Commerce, as are many of the individual businesses that represent the Design District. They also hold chamber membership. So the letter that we did submit is the result of many conversations with folks at the Design District, with some of the individual businesses, our own Economic Development Committee, the Chamber's Executive Committee, and also town staff. Mr. Dumais and Ms. Gorski have been very communicative with us in getting some clarifications. So I just did want to read the letter that we submitted because we do make some suggestions. The West Hartford Chamber of Commerce represents over 575 businesses and nonprofits through our community. We would like to provide our input regarding the proposed ordinance establishing a 9-month moratorium on certain uses not supportive of transit-oriented development. The Design District of West Hartford, which is a member of the Chamber, recently shared with us their concerns regarding the proposed moratorium. After several productive discussions with the Design District of West Hartford, the Chamber would like to suggest that the time period of the moratorium be reduced from 9 months to 6 months. Furthermore, the Chamber's Economic Development Committee commits to participating in necessary outreach to ensure that the opinions, concerns, and wishes of the Design District of West Hartford are received by the town of West Hartford. Accordingly, the Chamber supports the ordinance establishing 6-month moratorium on certain uses not supportive of transit-oriented development. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Again, thank you for participating and for your comments. Do we want to go back and just make sure that there's nobody else? Mr. Milnamau? I don't know.
Madam Mayor, I have requested send a request for him to unmute.
Okay. Is there anybody else, Madam Moderator?
Madam Mayor, I will try to unmute phone number ending in 21 once again before we close. Madam Mayor, we are all set.
Okay. All right, so we're going to go back to town staff now. We'll go start with the town manager, and if you would like to respond to some of the concerns and your thoughts, and then we will go to council for questions. Thank you, Mr. Hart.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt Hart, Town Manager. I appreciate all the comments that we received this evening. Mr. Liftig's historical perspective. I agree when if indeed you decide to engage in this effort, we should look at T&D as well as to how this would impact transit-oriented development. Mr. Schumaleski's question about the combination of a potential self-storage use with a retail operation, I would defer to Mr. DeMay to respond to that. And then Mr. Conway's suggestion that we seek to reduce the moratorium from 9 months to 6 months. Discuss that with staff, and we do think we could reduce the schedule if that is something the council wished to do. So that's it from me right now, Mayor, and I'd like to ask through you, Mr. DeMay, to elaborate.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. DeMay?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Todd DeMay, Town Planner, for the record. I would like to second what Mr. Hart said. Mr. Liftig's historical perspective is very pertinent here. If this moratorium is ultimately adopted by the council, I think we can learn a lot from the process that was put into the T&D and in particular the areas in which the T&D failed to help inform us and going through a collaborative process to develop a potential new TOD zone. The comments by Mr. Schumaleski, the term gradual conformity, I would like to address that. He's on the phone and he's right. I didn't use that during our discussion with the Home Design District last week. I pulled that out as a example to explain the purpose of zoning. That term comes right out of our zoning ordinances, and it's part of the purpose of zoning as an overall construct. And much to Mr. Liftig's point, I'm looking at the ordinance now, and it dates back to 1969. So that term of art has been in place for a long time, and maybe it is time to revisit that as he suggested. That's where the term comes from. With respect to your other questions, it's a bit of an assessment of the uses. So if a site is predominantly used as retail and there's accessory components that support that retail or office, clearly that's not going to fall into a banned use. The example of Butler Power and Equipment, I think, is more an example of almost an automobile dealership. They have a lot of equipment and storage on the site. You go there, you visit, you might purchase something, but a bulk of the site is dedicated to the storage of vehicles and equipment outside. And that's why I think it would fall within one of our non-permitted classifications. However, there are a number of other businesses in the district that are contractors that might have retail showrooms or offices that do store material on the back of their properties. We did not feel that those would be impacted under this ordinance given our zoning definitions. And I'll agree with Mr. Hart. If the council were to adopt the moratorium, I think we could do this work and do it well within a 6-month time frame if that was the desire of the council. That's all, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Dumais. So I will go to the counselors for questions now. If you don't have a question, then you can just say pass. And if you want to, and if something comes up and you feel like you need to ask another question, assuming that timing isn't all used up, we will continue. We can come back to you. So I will start with the birthday girl, Ms. Planks.
Thank you very much. I just have a comment and then a quick question. So Todd, thank you very much for this presentation and also for displaying the information. That was very helpful to see in this particular district, the number of what have you, whether it's car dealerships, storage areas, or what have you. And in terms of the transit-oriented development, in terms of what we want to see going forward, thank you, Dr. Liftig, for giving us that history, because you're absolutely right. So we have a opportunity right now to look forward in terms of what we want this to look like well into our future. And I think we have that opportunity with the oriented development in terms of what we can do in these particular areas as some of these current businesses decide to close up or what have you. I do have a question though, because I know this was tossed around before, and I'm not sure if I heard the response or the answer to the discussion, and that's around the drive-in businesses. So you mentioned the, I think Chick-fil-A, the Dunkin' Donuts on New Park, and then the Dunkin' Donuts on New Britain Avenue, which is closed. So would that mean, since that's an existing business that has a drive-through, if another business were to come in, this moratorium would prevent another drive-through? Is that accurate, Mr. Dumais?
Thank you, Ms. Blanks. Mr. Dumais?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Councilor Blanks. Not necessarily, oddly enough. There's a little bit of complex legal rights associated with abandonment of use. So unless there was an intent by the current owner to abandon that use, and it's only been closed for a short period of time, and they haven't expressed intent to abandon the use as a Dunkin' Donuts, I think they're actually looking to redevelop it. Then it wouldn't prevent another use necessarily from going in. It would prevent an expansion of a use from going in. So if someone moved in with a larger drive-through facility with additional drive-in lanes or drive-through lanes, that would be prohibited if the ordinance, moratorium ordinance, were to be passed during that 9 or 6 month period. But it doesn't necessarily prohibit someone from utilizing an existing approval if it's not an expansion of that use.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Through
Dumais.
you, Madam Mayor. No
Thank
more.
you, Ms. Blanks.
Yeah.
You're all set? Okay. Mr. Davidoff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Dumais, for outlining the proposed ordinance. My question relates to process. Should the council adopt this resolution? Through you, Madam Mayor, as to who best can answer the question, what do we anticipate would be the process with respect to understanding the recommended changes? Who would be the key players involved in the discussions around the council table? Things of that nature, so I can get a better understanding of what events would take place during the moratorium period. And that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Davidoff. Mr. Hart, do you want to take this, and then Mr. Dumais? I'm not sure. It's up to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt Hart, Town Manager. Thank you for the question, Deputy Mayor. What we have contemplated is an interactive, iterative process, and we think, again, we could complete it within 6 months if needed. The 9 months would provide a little additional time. But we would work as a staff to develop recommendations for your consideration. We would want to consult and involve the Town Plan and Zone Commission. We would want to involve representatives from the Elmwood Business Association, Neighborhood Association, certainly representatives from the design district as well. Also other key stakeholders who may not necessarily be affiliated with either of those two districts in the process. I also think the Capital Region Council of Governments, their input would be valuable. The City of Hartford as well, since we're right on the border, and it would be interesting to see if it would be possible to align the zoning, if you will, between the two communities. It might be beneficial, we think, to engage a project consultant for a very relatively modest fee to assist us with the community outreach that we'd like to conduct as part of this initiative as well. So again, we'd like to get input from a relatively large group of stakeholders and periodically bring it to the council to provide you with an update, get your feedback, etc. So through you, Mayor, I'd like to ask Mr. Dumais to elaborate on my brief description.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Dumais?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think Mr. Hart nailed the overall process and construct correctly, and it's a process I think that the council and the town have used fairly successfully in the recent past on several different studies and initiatives. I think the critical component is that community engagement and identifying all of those stakeholders, and probably more that we didn't think of that Mr. Hart just mentioned. That input will undoubtedly inform us and be able to help us develop the most productive ordinance, the sports transit-oriented development for existing businesses that's compatible with the corridor. I do think that if we do it and we do it correctly, we can do it in 6 months if that's something the council's interested in doing. But it's very consistent with the past approaches. I think at the tail end of that process, Councilor Davidoff would be taking some version of a draft back to the council at one of those workshops and getting your support on a draft that when we would then advance through our normal zoning ordinance process, much as we're doing right now. So that's at the tail end of, anywhere from 45 to 60 days to schedule a formal hearing and adoption process at the very end.
Thank you, Mr. Dumais. Mr. Davidoff, any follow-up? You're at your 5 minutes, so if it is, it's brief. Can't hear you. Don't know if you're on mute.
I'm all set. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Fitch.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Cantor, and thank you for all the presenters as well as the business people, Mr. Liftig and Mr. Schumaleski, who came out, and Mr. Conway to speak about this. I think it's very, very interesting concept. And I know a lot of the trends going forward are people want to live in walkable neighborhoods. They want to be able to walk to things. They want to be able to do their shopping on foot. So I think it's very important that we study this a bit more. But my question really and truly is it's balance, right? So we need to be mindful of some of the emerging trends. I mean, who would have thought that we may not be working, a lot of us, in big, huge office buildings anymore. We might be more telecommuting or what have you, or even working out of state from home. So those things are occurring, and certainly COVID's driven a lot of that, but I think a lot of it is going to be here to stay. So we have to be forward looking in whatever we're doing. But in terms of stakeholders, I was wondering what you would do now, and I guess the best way to say it would be by example. So some of these businesses will have to be, I'll call it grandfathered for lack of a better word. So you've got Chick-fil-A there, which has a drive-in. Now let's say, I'm going to make this up, but Joe's Bar and Grill wants to come to town. It's a big franchise. There's none in West Hartford. They want to come to this particular district, and they want to drive through. So they can give people choice. They can either walk to the restaurant and come inside and have a nice meal, or they can grab it to go and they're on their way someplace and drive through. Now, if this will remain a prohibitable use, how does that business compete with one that's grandfathered like a Chick-fil-A? So I'm just, I'm pro-business, as you know, and I think a lot of us are, probably all of us. So I just want to make sure that we're sensitive to development for businesses so that they're on a level playing field. And then my other question would be, how do we handle businesses that are in the dark orange or light orange zones now? And maybe they haven't come to us yet and expressed a development idea or what they have in mind, but if it's in one of those boxes that's not prohibited in a TOD, what are we going to do? So those are more practical issues that I don't know if this is the right time, but this is what's going through my mind as I heard the presentations and the speakers.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Fay. I'll go through you, Mr. Hart, and if you want to, then we can go to Mr. Dumais. So.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilor Fay, for your question. Yes, the moratorium, if approved by the council, would certainly put some limitations in effect for either a 9-month period or a 6-month period if you decide to modify it accordingly. That certainly is a period of time. However, this process is going to allow us to look at things in a more comprehensive way, if you will, in terms of how we promote that transit-oriented development. We will look at the whole variety and combination of uses, including the ones that you just referenced, whether it's larger retail, smaller retail, et cetera. So I do think, we could certainly include that within the scope of the review here. But there would be some temporary limitations, to your point, if indeed this is approved.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hart. So, Ms. Fay, any follow-up?
No, thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, let's, so now we will go to Mr. Gold. Councilor Gold.
Thank you, Mayor Cantor and Lee Gold, for the record, through you. I'm hearing what everybody's speaking about. Number one, thank you for the presentation. It was very insightful, meaningful, and thoughtful. We really have an ability to transform an area of town, bridging existing businesses into the future, and with really limitless potential in that area. I am concerned, and I do caution the restrictions that we're putting on property owners. However, I'm confident with our town staff that they will move without haste. I appreciate their flexibility and the ability to move from 9 to 6 months, and move with a clear, concise intent to help really strike a balance between the existing members of our design district of West Hartford and the need to really reach and see the full potential of this TOD in this area. The one question I just wanted to dovetail off of Mr. Davidoff in terms of procedure, we had mentioned before in discussions that obviously we needed to partner or at least explore the possibility of partnering with the neighboring town, city of Hartford. Have we reached out to anybody there, counterparts, to begin that process in advance, or are we starting from scratch at this point?
Thank you, Mr. Gold. Mr. Hart?
Thank you, Mayor. Matt Hart, Town Manager. Thank you, Councilor Gold, for your question. Yes, we have informed the city and actually made an official referral to them. Mr. Dumais can elaborate on my comments with respect to his good working relationship with his counterparts at the city.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Dumais.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Councilor Gold. Yes, we made a formal referral, and if you will recall, we actually had a collaborative meeting with the city of Hartford 3 years ago around this issue and the need to coordinate and collaborate. Unfortunately, since that time, they went ahead and adopted their own POD without inviting us back into that process. But we certainly will make sure that we collaborate and coordinate with them. They do have TOD-like zoning adopted on their sides of the fast track station areas. So that's something we will definitely make sure we do. They've gone through some significant staff changes over the past few years as well, but they have an excellent planner at the head of their department now. So I'm looking forward to that working relationship.
Thank you, Mr. Dumais. Any follow-up, Mr. Gold, or you?
I'm all set through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you. Councilor Kerrigan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, Beth Kerrigan. I have no questions. I just want to make a comment. I'm grateful for the presentation that was so comprehensive, and a big thank you to Todd for being so responsive to the needs of David and the conformity concern. Also to the Chamber's concern about the shrinking the moratorium to 6 months. I appreciate and have a great deal of respect for the work that you do and how responsive you were to their needs. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Kerrigan. Mr. Sweeney said pass, but I'm just going to give you one more time, one more chance. I want you to say it, not me.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I am all set.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Winograd.
Thank you, Ben Winograd, Town Council. Just to follow up, I think everybody agrees how appreciative I am of the work of the chamber in terms of offering a compromise and having those discussions. I understand you're sort of getting it from both sides, and I think I'm so in favor of trying to work these things out with as little friction as possible. But I am concerned on the town side that to Rick Liftig's point, we don't want to do this incorrectly. And given how long things take, particularly once we even have a draft, there's a lot of work here to get something, and then to get it presumably back through TPZ, and that whole process can take itself, more than a month. So I'll just, I'll certainly go along with the recommendation of town staff, but I do want to sort of make sure that you feel that 6 months is enough time to actually get us to a vote to pass an ordinance that deals with these issues. I'd hate to have a gap where moratorium runs out and then we have a month and a half where something gets sold that goes against whatever plan we've come up with. So again, I'll put it back to you, Mr. Hart, through you, Madam Mayor. Are you sure? And I can't see that 3 months makes that much of a difference in terms of the business community. But again, I'm happy to get on a fast track if that's what it'll take to get some support. But can you do it?
Thank you, Mr. Winograd. So I have some thoughts on this too, but Mr. Hart, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt Hart, Town Manager. Thank you, Councilor Winograd, for the good question. You're a veteran councilor, and you've seen how things have played out in the past. We agree. The 6 months would be, I don't know if it would be ambitious. We think it's doable, but we need to move expeditiously, and we're going to need the council to be involved. We may need to call special meetings, etc. We do think we would need assistance from a consulting firm on the outreach component. Again, we think that cost would be relatively modest. It would fit under the department's larger budget. We would certainly need that support in order to get this done within the time frame. Perhaps another way to frame it could be, we pass this with a 9-month schedule with a target to complete within 6. If we're able to do that, certainly no penalty for finishing earlier. But I very much appreciate your sensitivity to the issue.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Winograd, anything further? All set? Okay.
Ben Winograd, all set.
Okay. Oh, thank you. All right, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Christopher Williams, West Hartford Town Council. I have 3 questions, and I'll just lay them out there, and whoever is appropriate to respond, please do so. So the first one, I think, is obvious. Those businesses that already would be impermissible under this resolution, like the storage facilities, they won't be impacted by this. Is that correct? So that's question 1. Question 2, and I am sort of torn on this issue because, to Mr. Schumaleski's point, it feels like in some respects, this area of town, the marketplace is sort of indicating what it wants there in some respects. And the question I have for the town is the town substituting its own vision for the marketplace in a way that may not be productive? In other words, that area of town is developing in a way that the market and the public want, and even though it's inconsistent with the town vision, does that make the town's vision better? Because we are choosing sort of winners and losers in terms of businesses for at least a temporary period of time. But it seems like, and it's obvious, that the intent is for the long term, which is why you're having a moratorium, which brings me to my third question, which is, if you're having a moratorium, it suggests that there are businesses coming in to invest that are of this nature and quality. And is there an issue of potential litigation that the town faces by implementing such a moratorium? I guess the concept that we've done it before suggests perhaps not, but those are my three questions. So thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. All good questions. I will start with you, Mr. Hart, and I don't know if Corporation Counsel will need to weigh in as well, or Mr. Dumais. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt Hart, Town Manager. Thank you, Councilor Williams, for your questions. I will start off, and I will seek support from Mr. Dumais and Corporation Counsel. Mr. Dumais can explain better than I about how the concept of grandfathering works under zoning. You know, essentially, if there's an existing use when something goes into effect, how long it remains in place, etc. The second question, talk about how the market certainly dictates uses. Are we, the town, unilaterally substituting a vision? A couple of thoughts on that. Number one, the POCD already has a certain vision, if you will. I think the town has been very interested in transit-oriented development for that location for several years now, at least going back to 2015, perhaps earlier. But the most important point I want to make is this 6 to 9 month process, whatever we choose, this is going to give us an opportunity to work with the stakeholders in an iterative, interactive way to refine that vision. You know, we're going to bring them to the table. This just gives us the time to do it and not get surprised by something that ultimately might not be compatible with that ultimate vision. And then the point regarding litigation, my understanding is that a moratorium can be challenged, and I would defer to Corporation Counsel on that, Mayor. So first to Mr. Dumais, then to Mr. Dodge, through you.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Dumais.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Mr. Councilor Williams. If a business is currently impacted by the proposed moratorium, so we're talking about a temporary impact at this point, they would be precluded from expanding or intensifying that business use, not necessarily from operating or continuing. If this moratorium then was adopted, and then we developed a TOD zoning that also prohibited that use. So that would be more of a permanent impact if you want to think about that. That business would then become what we would call grandfathered in, meaning that it would allow to continue in perpetuity. It could be sold to future owners, and it could continue. It just couldn't be expanded under the zoning because it's a considered non-conforming use. I hope that answers your question about that aspect of the question. I can also, I'll let Corporation Counsel Dodge answer, but moratoriums are established and enabled under state law in Connecticut. They're frequently used. We've used them several points in the past in West Hartford. Most recently that I can recall was for alternative energy systems and also medical marijuana. We use those in place for short duration. I think generally speaking, courts find them used properly when we limit them in time and duration. It's something that we were very specific about doing, that we limit their physical dimensions. So we don't want to cast a broad net over the entire community. We want to limit the physical dimension of a moratorium. And if we can even do that within a district even smaller, courts have found that to be a permissible use, generally speaking. And that's something that, working with Corporation Counsel, the Dodge and Verano, we were very cognizant of doing at the onset. We didn't want to impact properties that we didn't feel were in critical locations. We wanted to cast as narrow of a net as possible. So I'll leave the more legal response to the Corporation Counsel, but I think between Matt and my answer, I hope we answered your other questions, Councilor Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Dumais. I'll just go to Mr. Dodge, and then we'll go back to Mr. Williams for if something's not clear. Thank you, Ms.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Dallas Dodge Corporation Counsel. I'd like to thank Mr. Dumais for his very detailed response to that, very lawyerly response, and I really have very little to add to it. We did research the issue of moratoriums, and he is correct that courts seem to have upheld them so long as they are limited in time and scope. Typically, they like to see them be less than a year and limited in geographic area. In terms of the possibility of the town facing litigation, no corporation counsel can ever guarantee that every ordinance won't be subject to legal challenge. However, I would note that I did sign off on the form and legality of this ordinance, so I have a high degree of confidence that it is that it would be deemed legal if it were challenged. However, as we all learn in law school, somebody can sue for anything. Whether they'll be successful is the question, and I don't think somebody would be successful in challenging this particular ordinance as drafted.
Thank you, Mr. Dodge. Okay, Mr. Williams, anything that was not answered from your three questions? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Williams. All right, we are, so I did have a question on the zoning definitions. If the zoning definition was defined by us in our ordinance as is defined by TOD, but it was our definition, it was in our ordinances. I'm not sure if it's our definition. Is there flexibility in that definition? And we took it as it stood to be consistent in this moratorium. But then as we define, can we actually change the TOD definition and go back into our ordinance and change that? Mr. Dumais, I guess.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To answer your question, yes, we have the ability, not through the moratorium per se, but going forward, if the moratorium were to be adopted and we're working on TOD, we'll have the ability to define that the way we see fit that works for the community. So that's something that we completely have the ability to define. We currently do not have that defined within our zoning ordinances anywhere. So that would be a new term of art or a new section that we'd be contemplating adding. So we'd have that ability through our normal ordinance amendment process.
And would that be something that you would recommend doing in conjunction with this particular zoning, ultimate zoning change, or would that be a separate sort of outside of this moratorium?
It would be, I would say it'd be outside of this moratorium as part of a future TOD zoning initiative. We would want to make sure we clearly define and articulate what is TOD and then define the purpose of it in any future ordinance. Okay. And has TOD art changed at all during, I don't know if you've read anything that's come out of the pandemic. I've seen a lot of information lately on the 15-minute city idea. And I know that oftentimes is around some transit hub, but it's also focused on everything within a very short. So I just didn't know whether that was something that you had any further information on in the last 8 months since this pandemic has hit. Has there been any new interpretation? Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, there has been some new discussion and dialogue in the professional field around development in general, in really shrinking transit work sheds, and that's that 15-minute live, work, walk zone that you're kind of referencing there. I think most professionals are interested in seeing how will the long-term effects, if any, of the COVID health crisis impact public transit. I know a few councilors commented on that in their discussion. I think in Connecticut, we've seen, currently during COVID, CT Transit in general, ridership is way down. Metro North, extremely down. New York City just this week announced additional subway lines being shut down because of the COVID crisis. So I think that's the big interest within the planning community and transportation engineering community is, will there be permanent long-term effects by this health crisis? And the answer is no one knows yet.
Right, and a renewed focus on more permanent bicycle lanes and that type of sort of independent outdoor transportation, right? I mean, that's been a
Yes,
focus as well.
that's been a focus, outdoor livable spaces, creating those in every place that we can, creating these outdoor spaces, much like we did in the center with the outdoor dining, creating more spaces to be outside and live, including on the transit side, as you mentioned, more walkability, bikeability, and other amenities such as that.
Okay, thank you. Before we close the pub, we do have to have the discussion on the 6-9 months, and I will say, and maybe we're going to have to go back and forth a little bit on this because it's a little cumbersome to have a discussion in this format. But I understand very much the need and the want to minimize this. This moratorium, we don't do moratoriums very often. They've been rare. You mentioned a couple, but they were very short-lived, and they are rare. But they serve a purpose, so we don't have things happen for the next 30, 50 years that we do not feel is in the best interest of the town, and not consistent with our POCD, and so I am concerned in a COVID environment. We don't have a lot of redundancy in staff. Todd's office actually is very lean. I'm concerned about a temporary illness or even a more, hopefully there will be none. But it's very concerning to me that in a pandemic we would tighten this in a way that might really put undue pressure on our staff, and we'd have to take shortcuts and not do what is needed right now, which is look at the transit-oriented development, but also look at the TND that has actually, I think, worked to, as Mr. Liftig said, really had great intentions, but we did not see development. It actually stopped with the TND. And so we really need to do a deep dive into that and figure out how we can spur the right kind of development and redevelopment without, in a way that is going to benefit not only the neighborhood and the district, but the town as a whole. So I am concerned about that. So what I would prefer to do, as Mr. Winograd had mentioned, we know how things go, but I would urge staff to aim to complete this in a 6-month time frame. But know that we, statutorily, we have the 9 months if we need it for those external pressures that we feel. We also have budget season that we've got to go through. And again, we don't know. We've got a new administration coming in. We may have to drop things to do some kind of shovel-ready projects to be, and I just am concerned about those unforeseen pressures that we just don't know about. So as much as I would like to say, I'd like to see this done in 3 months. I think 6 months is a good goal. I want to make sure that we have that leeway to extend it to have that 9-month period of time if we need it. So that would be my take on it. But I would like to hear from anybody else that might disagree, or so I would not make a motion to amend the ordinance right now. Is there any other comments on that before we leave the public hearing?
Thank you, Mayor. Matt Hart, Town Manager. I think your recommendation is wise and well stated.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hart. Any other comments from councilors or any questions? Okay. And just before I read into the record a couple of things, I do want to say that there really is, and I will say this in the council meeting to be part of the record, there is a movement, a national movement, because partly, and maybe Mr. DeMay can comment on this, because of the move to online retail largely, but also the tech companies that have expanded. There is a lot of private equity that has been investing in storage units, and some of them are existing storage units and some of them are new storage units. And just in our own community, there were 11 storage units bought for private equity. But some of the quotes that I just wanted to leave you with, and this is one of the reasons why I think a moratorium is important. Is this there was a fund that talked about their primary focus, creating and maintaining investor wealth through local alternative real estate investment strategies in self-storage. And then they talked about the diverse mix of storage facilities within select markets of the United States. The fund provides an investment opportunity that combines income, principal, investment growth, and elements of capital preservation. It is looked at as a diversified investment strategy and has a steady income stream along with it, unlike a lot of other, well, some real estate does, some real estate doesn't. But this is a movement that I think we need to consider when we're doing our own, what is the right, what is right for this area. And I think there is some movement right now and interest. And I think if we don't carefully monitor what's going on and decide how we want this area to function, things might be changed under our feet. So I'm a little concerned about that. Anyway, and they have been talking about there in the last decade, and it really is tied to online retail, has been a very much larger interest in storage units. So, and I don't know if Mr. Dumais has any comments on that. I don't know if you've. No. Okay. All right. Anyway, okay. So with that, before we close the hearing, any further comments from counselors or staff? I don't see any. Text me if I don't see you. Before we close the hearing, I'd like to read into the records letters dated November 5th from TPZ, recommending approval, and November 20th from CROG, finding no apparent conflict with regional plans and policies or the concerns of neighboring town, and commending the town for exploring appropriate zoning to encourage transit-oriented development. And is there any objection? I would move to close the public hearing, but is there any objection? All right, seeing none, the hearing is now closed. Thank you, and we will start the council meeting in 1 minute as we move over and get organized. Thank you. Again, if you don't want to participate in the council meeting, you might want to sign off and watch on Comcast Channel 5 or Frontier or WHCI. Thank you. All right. If it's all good, we will continue with the council meeting. Everybody okay? All right. I'm calling the November 24th council meeting to order, and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you can stand, please do. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, Ms. LeBreau.
Ms. Blanks.
Present.
Ms. Cantor.
Here.
Mr. Davidoff.
Here.
Mr. Davidoff.
Here.
Ms. Fay. Ms. Fay? Mr. Gold? Ms. Kerrigan?
Here.
Mr. Sweeney?
Here.
Mr. Winograd?
Here.
And Mr. Williams?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. LeBrow. I have been doing this, and I think it's especially important as we head into a holiday season. COVID cases now in the United States since January 21st are 12,333,452 as of midday today. The number of deaths, again, as midday today, 257,016 of our American citizens have died from COVID. I also want to, today was a formal day of transition for our new administration so I want to wish much success and peace and all the best to America, and congratulate the Biden and Harris administration in their new charge, and they have quite a task ahead of them. So I also want to extend birthday wishes to my colleague, Carol Anderson, Blanks. Happy birthday. All right, public forum. Any resident or taxpayer of the town who wishes to address the council regarding any item on the agenda which is not otherwise subject to public hearing may call 408-418-9388. Again, 408-418-9388. Access code 132-886-2372. That is access code 132-886-2372. Please note that item 7A was the subject of a public hearing earlier this evening and may not be addressed during the public forum under our council rules. Likewise, item 8A will be the subject of a future public hearing and may not be addressed during this public forum. We will be starting with several proclamations, and I don't know if our police chief is on. Is he here? Mr. Hart.
Mayor Matt Hart, Town Manager. My apologies. I'm going to recommend that we hold off on that proclamation until the next regular council meeting. That will also give us an opportunity to recognize outgoing or retiring Assistant Chief Coppinger at the same time.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Dodge, do we just, how do we handle that item? Do I just say we will postpone until next meeting and that's enough?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You could either postpone or withdraw the item.
Okay, without objection, I withdraw the proclamation. Any objection? Seeing none, we will address that next time. Next proclamation is Small Business Saturday. Whereas the town of West Hartford celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community. According to the United States Small Business Administration, there are 31.7 million small businesses in the United States. They represent 99.9% of all firms with paid employees in the United States and are responsible for, are responsible for 65.1% of net new jobs created from 2000 to 2019. Whereas small businesses employ 47.1% of employees in the private sector in the United States, 62% of U.S. small businesses reported they need to see consumer spending return to pre-COVID levels by the end of 2020 in order to stay in business. 65% of U.S. small business owners said it would be most helpful to their businesses to have their regulars return and start making purchases again. 3/4 of the U.S. consumers are currently looking for ways to shop small and support their community. Whereas 96% of customers who shopped on Small Business Saturday agree that shopping at small, independently owned businesses supports their commitment to making purchases that have a positive social, economic, and environmental impact. And 97% of all consumers who shopped on Small Business Saturday agree that small businesses are essential to their community. And whereas 95% of customers who shop on Small Business Saturday reported the day makes them want to shop or eat at small, independently owned restaurants, businesses all year long, not just during the holiday season. And whereas West Hartford supports our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our communities, and whereas advocacy groups as well as public and private organizations across the country have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that on behalf of the Town Council and the residents of West Hartford, I, Mayor Sherry G. Cantor, do hereby proclaim November 28th, 2020 as Small Business Saturday in the town of West Hartford, and urge the residents of our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year. And again, like this proclamation said, our businesses need us and need our residents more than ever right now. So please remember that as you're heading into the holiday season. And the next proclamation is Giving Tuesday proclamation, whereas the health and vitality of a community is reflected in the participations of its citizens in those activities that further the strength of the town. And whereas Giving Tuesday was established as a national day of giving on the Tuesday following Thanksgiving. And whereas Giving Tuesday is a celebration of philanthropy and volunteerism where people give whatever they are able to give. And whereas Giving Tuesday is a day where citizens work together to share commitments, rally for favorite causes, build a stronger community, and think about other people. And whereas it is fitting and proper on Giving Tuesday and on every day to recognize the tremendous impact of philanthropy, volunteerism, and community service in the town of West Hartford. And whereas Giving Tuesday is an opportunity to encourage citizens to serve others throughout this holiday season and during other times of the year. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that on behalf of the Town Council and the residents of West Hartford, I, Mayor Sherry G. Cantor, do hereby proclaim December 1st, 2020 as Giving Tuesday in the town of West Hartford and encourage all citizens to join together to give back to the community in any way that is personally meaningful. And the last proclamation is the Field of Dreams proclamation. Whereas the health and vitality of a community is reflected in the participation of its citizens in those activities that further the strength of the town. And whereas Field of Dreams was founded in 1998 as a committee comprised of representatives of various West Hartford soccer leagues and other supportive residents, and was established as a community nonprofit organization in 2003 with a mission to support the construction or refurbishment of recreational soccer fields in West Hartford. And whereas Field of Dreams raised funds through galas such as soccer ball, grants, corporate donations, and contributions from thousands of soccer players in West Hartford. And whereas Field of Dreams collected and donated to the town funds totaling over $732,608 for field construction, field renovation, the construction of a handicapped restroom and snack bar, and to support soccer operations. And whereas the town of West Hartford's Town Council has contributed $500,000 over the past 22 years as matching funds to recognize and support the efforts of the Field of Dreams, which brings the total commitment raised by Field of Dreams to over $1.23 million. And whereas Field of Dreams intends to cease operations at the end of 2020, having accomplished its mission by funding the construction of 6 new soccer fields, a restroom, snack bar building, and numerous other soccer field improvements. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that on behalf of the Town Council of West Hartford and the residents of West Hartford, I, Mayor Sherry G. Cantor, do hereby thank the Field of Dreams Board of Directors and the soccer community in West Hartford for your efforts, generosity, and commitment to recreational soccer in West Hartford. A great big thank you. All right. Then we will move on. Seems so weird to flow, but now we will move on to the consent calendar. Without objection, I'd like to place items 5A, B, and C on the consent calendar. Are there any objections? Seeing none, these items will be placed on the consent calendar. And the consent, without objection, the items are on the consent calendar, and and with no objection, the consent calendar is adopted. Seeing no objections, the consent calendar is adopted. Now we will go to reports from the town manager. Mr. Hart.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt Hart, Town Manager. I will try to move quickly through my report. It is loaded on the board doc system if you want to take a look at it and read it in more detail. First, under council meetings, just as a reminder, we will hold a public hearing and a special council meeting on the night of December 3rd to discuss the zoning application submitted by 47 Pratt Street LLC for its project on New Britain Avenue and Berkshire Road. And then you will hold your next regular meeting on December 8th. Moving on, I wanted to acknowledge a couple of retiring staff. I believe I discussed this last time, but Rich Crow, our golf pro at Rockledge Golf Club and Buena Vista, has retired after an outstanding 36-year career. We had an opportunity to recognize Rich in a virtual way. I want to thank the mayor for her attendance. I thought the event was really well done. You know, under Rich's leadership, you know, Rockledge developed to really the premier publicly owned course in our region. So we certainly wish him all the best in the future. I also wanted to thank and acknowledge Joe Cadeau at the library. Joe is our outgoing head of programs and publicity. He's going to be retiring at the end of the calendar year as well. Joe has worked at the library for 26 years. He's been involved in a lot of great programs and initiatives over the years that you would recognize, such as West Hartford Reads, One World Lectures, the Shakespeare Book Club, more recently, the commemoration of Trees of West Hartford, you will recall. So really want to thank Joe for his many, many years of service and wish him all the best in his next chapter as well. From our police department, we did recently recognize, or the Exchange Club recognized, and the mayor and I were in attendance, Police Officer John Began as the 2020 Officer of the Year. We held the ceremony outside the police station in compliance with COVID protocols. Mr. Began, if you get a chance to review the report, he's done a lot of really neat things, a lot of great things since joining the department in 2009. So in 10, 11 years, he's accomplished a lot, and we're very proud to have him as a member of our team. And then this past Monday, the mayor and I attended a promotional ceremony held by the police department, and we celebrated 6 promotions. Sergeant Carrie Kluke has been promoted to lieutenant, Officer Ray Narciso to sergeant, Officer Amanda Martin to sergeant, Officer John Cordone to detective, Officer Jan Roman to detective, and I should have mentioned, we also promoted Officer Began to the rank of sergeant as well. So it certainly was a very good week for Officer Began. And then the last item I wanted to touch on is the upcoming Thanksgiving Day holiday. As we normally do, we will have a couple of key delays and closures. Trash waste collection will be postponed by a day. So if your collection is normally on Thursday, the day of the holiday, it will be held on Friday. Friday's collection on Saturday. No other days will be impacted. Our offices will be closed in recognition of the holiday as well. I'm sure the mayor is going to talk about this under her report, but I want to wish the members of the council and our community a safe and healthy Thanksgiving. I know we've been through a lot as a community over the last 10 months, and I think we've done some very good things, working as a team, working in a collaborative manner. And, now is not the time to let up. We've got to stay strong and adhere to the protocols that the state has set for us. And the smallest you can make your Thanksgiving celebration, the better. I know in my case, I'll be celebrating the holiday with my wife and 2 teenage daughters. We've got 2 in-laws. My in-laws live in town. We'll be bringing dinner to them. We'll be bringing dinner to them. That's how we're going to do it. That's just an example of how we can be safe over this very, very important holiday. So I want to wish everyone a healthy and safe Thanksgiving. That completes my report this evening, Mayor. Happy to take any questions you or your colleagues may have.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Are there any questions for the town manager? I don't see any hands up. Okay. Corporation Counsel, Mr. Dodge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As you're all aware, the governor continues to update his executive orders and also guidance with regard to the COVID-19 public health and civil preparedness emergency. Most recently, he issued a prohibition on sports. That was Executive Order 9M. And just to update everybody, one of the most frequent questions that we've gotten about that is whether it affects pickup sports as well as organized sports. And the answer is yes, it does affect pickup sports as well. And so, that would include, for example, pickup games of basketball, football, or other sports that people may engage in. In addition, he reduced the indoor capacity for gyms, and also required that now at all fitness centers, masks be worn at all times. Previously, masks were only required when a certain amount of social or physical distance was not able to be maintained. And also, just hot off the presses, earlier this evening, the governor issued a new Executive Order 9N, which increases the fines for businesses that violate the COVID rules to $10,000 per violation. And those fines may be issued by the health department in some instances, for example, for restaurants or other facilities that are designated health facilities, or by the municipal designee for all other businesses, which in our case is the zoning enforcement officer as well as the fire marshal. And so again, the fines for violations of the COVID rules have been increased to $10,000, and that is based on an executive order that was issued earlier this evening. Finally, Madam Mayor, we will require an executive session later this evening to discuss the purchase, sale, or the potential purchase, sale, or lease of real estate. However, I do not anticipate that there will be any council action following the executive session. This will simply be an update for the council on a couple of potential real estate acquisitions.
Thank you, Mr. Dodge. Are there any questions for Corporation Counsel? Okay, I don't see any. And I don't see any texts. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Dodge. We will now go to 7. Ordinance establishing a 9-month moratorium on certain uses not supportive of transit-oriented development. This was subject to a public hearing prior to this meeting. And I make the motion to adopt, but we will, Mr. Hart, do you want to just give a brief overview of this if anybody just tuned in? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm very happy to do that. Matt Hart, Town Manager, looking at the agenda item summary, this ordinance seeks to establish a 9-month moratorium on certain uses that we would consider to be, the ordinance considers to be not supportive of transit-oriented development. As we've structured it, as we've drafted it, it would apply only to lots in business or industrial districts within 1/4 mile of either the Flatbush or Elmwood CT fast track stations, with frontage on a limited number of streets. And that area generally corresponds to a 5-minute walking zone around each station, which is considered to be suitable for transit-oriented development. The moratorium is designed to provide us with the time we need to review and develop appropriate land use regulations designed to promote transit-oriented development. That has been a long-term goal of the town. As we discussed in the public hearing, we've been working on it since at least 2015, if not earlier. It's a recommendation coming out of our recently updated plan of conservation and development as well. In terms of process, town staff would plan to work in a very collaborative, iterative, and interactive way with members of the council, TPZ, representatives from our business association, Capital Region Council of Governments, City of Hartford, and other key stakeholders through the zoning process. Through you, Mayor, I'd like to recognize Mr. Dumais, who can report on the findings from TPZ and the Capital Region Council of Governments in response to your referral.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Mr. Dumais.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe you did read the letter from the Capital Regional Council of Government as part of the hearing process, but since I've been asked, I would note that their letter dated November 20th states the staff of the Regional Planning Commission of the Capital Regional Council of Governments has reviewed this zoning referral and finds no apparent conflict with regional plans and policies or concerns of neighboring towns. Staff commends the town for exploring appropriate zoning regulations that will promote more livable town centers and compact mixed-use developments that will provide appropriate mixed use in areas of transit stations. Similarly, our November 5th letter from the Planning and Zoning Commission states, after a detailed review, the TPZ acted by unanimous vote to recommend approval of the moratorium, finding the request consistent with the 2020, 2030, and 2030 Plan of Conservation and Development. In particular, the TPZ noted that this application supports the identified action item in the transportation section of the POCD to review the zoning ordinances and consider the creation of a new transit-oriented district zone. I would point out, Madam Mayor, we also had a referral letter from our Pedestrian Bicycle Commission that supported the ordinance when it was introduced back in March. However, they didn't submit a new letter, but they also recommended approval for what it's worth. It just didn't get another referral on this reintroduced time.
Thank you, Mr. Dumais. Okay, so again, this was the subject of a public hearing. We did have some comments from the chamber, from the Home Design District, and this is going to be an interactive process to develop a new TOD zoning ordinances to guide for development for the next 10, 20 years, so or more. Any comments from the council? I can go through. Ms. Blanks, anything? I don't. Go ahead. Anybody? If you raise your hand high, and I'm not seeing everybody on screen, so if you want to share, please text me. Okay, so I will say that this is not moratoriums are not something we do frequently, nor do we take them lightly, and we know that there are real consequences to everything that we do, and this kind of consequence can be a real it can create unknowns to people that want to invest. But we want to make sure that we are doing what is right for the long term for our community. The world is changing quickly, and we don't want to have an opportunity for uses that might be there for 30 to 50 years that are not in concert with the taxpayer investments of either the fast track or even the infrastructure that is being put in a complete streets away on this boulevard. It is a regional destination, the Home Design District. So many businesses in that area are, and they're wonderful gems. But we just want to make sure that we have a very, very old zone. I think it was mentioned that it was 1969, we did do a TND, that a traditional neighborhood design district overlay, which is not promoting development like we want it to work. So it gives us the opportunity to relook at that and figure out how do we encourage development and still make things beneficial to the area and, again, the region and the town. So this gives us this. There was also a request for a 6-month, shortening it to 6 month, and we, on recommendation from the chamber, I'm a little concerned about committing to that, although we are encouraging a 6-month moratorium, and hopefully there's no barrier to us doing it more quickly. Except that there are real challenges in the world right now with COVID. And again, like I mentioned in our public hearing, we don't have a lot of extra staff. We have a pretty lean staff, and especially now with people on occasion having to quarantine or be out, makes it more challenging to accomplish some of the work and stay on a strict schedule. We also have a budget time in between that could be quite challenging as well. So we would like to make sure that we have the flexibility to do this right and not to have it fall short, but not drag on. So we understand the urgency, but we also understand the challenges that we face. And with that, any other comments or questions on this? And we will go to roll call. Ms. LeBreau.
Ms. Blanks?
Yes.
Ms. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Davidoff?
Yes.
Ms. Fay? Mr. Gold?
Yes.
Mr. Gold? I can't hear Mr. Gold, if anyone.
Mr. Gold, are you off mute? All right, he's giving a wave.
Okay. A thumbs up?
Text me yes. Text SE yes.
Ms. Kerrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Winograd?
Yes.
And Mr. Williams? Thank you. That is unanimous.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. LeBreau. Then for number 8, new business, ordinance permitting accessory dwelling units in one-family resident districts. Without objection, I move we set for public hearing on January 12th, 2021 at 7 p.m. and refer to TPZ and CROG. Any objections? Seeing none, the motion is adopted. Resolution revising the schedule of fees for various recreation facilities. I move that we adopt, but I will turn to Mr. Hart for explanation, and then I'm sure Ms. Rubino-Turco.
Thank you, Mayor. Matt Hart, Town Manager. Council will recall that we reviewed this item in a special meeting earlier this month. Every year at about this time, town staff would present any recommended changes to the fee schedule for leisure services to the town council for your consideration. This year, we have a relatively modest number that we're seeking your approval on. And again, we did review them in more detail a couple weeks ago. Through you, Mayor, Ms. Rubino-Turco can provide a brief summary of our recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Ms. Rubino-Turco.
Good evening, Helen Rubino-Turco, Director of Leisure Services and Social Services. As Town Manager Hart said, the Town Council governs fees that are charged at many of the leisure services facilities. And we review these rates annually to make sure that we're not overcharging or that we're charging market rate, or that we're trying to cover our costs as much as we can. And the resolution that you have before you many of the fees that are recommended are in the Leisure Services Fund. And we operate these programs in a business model, so we try and recover the cost. There are also some minor changes that are proposed at miscellaneous park facilities or at Westmore Park, and those are pretty minor. At Rockledge Golf Club, we do not propose an increase in the greens fees. Rather, we propose a modest increase in the annual golf passes. This is for people who love golfing there. There's about 150 that buy these passes every year. And we haven't gone up in this area for a couple of years now, actually since 2018. And so we proposed that change, as well as increasing the off-season rates. Again, more and more people are taking advantage of these, and it does require a little bit more maintenance. So we're suggesting those minor changes at Rockledge. And at Buena Vista, we haven't changed rates since 2018, and we're a little bit underpriced for what it is that we offer. And so we are suggesting an increase of $1 per round there. At Veterans Rink, the only change that we're really suggesting here is an increase in the amount of the rental rate for the whole sheet of ice. And so there's no change to the admissions or the discount passes. And also the figure skating club changed a little bit, and they've now assumed their membership fee in their overall pass, because they get like a key fob that checks them in and out. And so we've sort of rolled that into their entrance fee. And so we've increased the price, adjusted the price a little bit there. At Cornerstone Aquatic Center, as you know, we outsource the facility, the management of the facility, to Health Fitness. And they haven't changed rates since they started a couple of years ago. And what they're suggesting is to go, instead of going with an annual membership, of going with a monthly membership. And this is really just adding more flexibility. It fits with the way the industry operates. More of the facilities charge a monthly membership rather than this more cumbersome annual membership. And so this is the direction that they'd like to go. The increases are fairly modest, particularly when it comes to seniors. It's very little change there, and it's flat for the family memberships for residents and senior residents, non-residents. I'm sorry. So really, this is a fitness and an aquatic center. They have been challenged since they began with not one but two major renovation projects, and now a pandemic that has really limited the usage. And so they found that they were spending a lot of time issuing refunds or freezing memberships. And if you do it month to month, it's just a lot easier. And so that's the model that they're going to. And as I said, the other changes that we're suggesting are very minor in our other facilities. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. LeBreau. We had a meeting on this of the whole a couple of weeks ago, and went through this in detail. Are there any questions before we vote on this? Mr. Sweeney.
No, I would just like to say thank you to Ms. Rubino Turco for her hard work on this, and I urge adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. I also want to thank. This has been obviously a really challenging time, and to be working on sort of these normal activities. It is hard in this odd world that we're in right now. But Helen has done such a great job of keeping things thriving during this difficult time. So appreciate very much. Any other comments or questions? All right, we will go to roll call. Ms. LeBreau.
Ms. Blanks.
Yes.
Ms. Cantor.
Yes.
Mr. Davidoff.
Yes.
Ms. Fay.
Yes.
Mr. Gold. Mr. Gold on mute.
He's having a problem with his audio, so I think he can text you or he can.
Ms. Kerrigan. Ms. Kerrigan. Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Mr. Winograd.
Yes.
Mr. Williams.
Yes.
And we'll try Ms. Kerrigan. Leave the vote open.
We'll leave the vote open but before we close the meeting, we'll have to. So maybe you can text her.
Yes.
And then you can come back with to make it public, and also with Lee. Same.
Madam Mayor, just sorry.
Yes, Mr. Dodge.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Dallas Dodge Corporation Council. Perhaps Councilor Gold could indicate with a thumbs up, thumbs down his vote so that's on the record rather than texting the clerk.
Thank you. All right, thumbs up, Mr. Gold. Thank you.
As I said to him, very, very John McCain-like.
I know. I actually, it reminded me too much. It was too painful. Anyway, all right, thank you. With that, we will leave it open for Ms. Kerrigan. If you don't get it, we'll close the vote. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Dodge. That makes sense? Okay. A resolution accepting a donation in honor of Richard F. Crow's retirement and appropriating funds to the Capital Non-Recurring Expenditure Fund. Mr. Hart, would you like to talk to this, and Ms. Rubino-Turco?
Thank you, Mayor. I think in the interest of time, I could just refer to Ms. Rubino-Turco, who could explain it briefly.
Thank you, Mr. Hart. Ms. Rubino-Turco.
Helen Rubino-Turco, Director of Leisure Services and Social Services. Rich Crow, as you know, is retiring after 36 years as the golf professional at Rockledge. And to honor his retirement and thank his professional team, which includes Andrew Kaloran and Kevin Smith for their exemplary performance as assistant golf professionals, a donation of $10,000 has been made by Dr. Elliot Zweig and Ms. Doreen Fundiller Zweig to help fund capital improvements to Rockledge, which is our 18-hole municipal golf course. Dr. Zweig told me that he has been honing his golf skills at Rockledge for 21 years and is a member of the men's club at Rockledge, and they wanted to support the improvements at Rockledge in Rich's honor. And this is really just an opportunity to thank the Zweigs, but also to recognize that our community steps forward and supports activities in many different ways. And this is just one way. The Zweigs also support other operations in town, and we're just grateful for this support. So these funds will be placed in a capital reserve account in our CNRE, our Capital Non-Recurring Expenditure Fund. As you may know, $1.50 of every round of golf and 75 cents of every 9-hole round of golf that's played at Rockledge gets put into this special fund. And every other year, the superintendent of golf identifies projects, and we draw monies from that fund to help support the capital improvements of Rockledge. So it's a self-sustaining situation. And that's where these funds will reside until such time as the project is identified during our regular capital improvement plan procedure. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rubino-Turco. It really is says a lot about our residents that feel so strongly and and support these causes. So without objection, oh, Mr. Sweeney, go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to say thank you to the Zweig's, who are also proud residents of West Hartford, and they have great kids and grandkids in town, and are also grandparents of Hall graduates. Just wanted to give them a shout out. They're great people, and thank them for their generous donation on us. Yeah, it was great.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney, and completely agree. Really impressive and very generous. Thank you. Okay, with that, without objection, is there any objection? The motion is adopted. Next is a resolution accepting a donation from Fields of Dreams, Inc. and appropriating funds for soccer field improvements. I will go right to Ms. Rubino Turco for this summary of this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Helen Rubino Turco, Director of Leisure Services and Social Services. About 21 years ago, we started Field of Dreams as a little community nonprofit organization in my living room. And we then formed a nonprofit organization. And over the years, we have raised money for soccer field construction, as you know, or renovation and other projects. And with this contribution, Field of Dreams has raised $732,608 and change funds to the town, as well as involving the town matching donations over the years, comes to over $1.2 million. And when we started this, I was told by Pat Allaire at some point that no nonprofit, no NGO, nonprofit in town had ever done what we had done. We raised money and we wrote a check to the town of West Hartford. And since then, other organizations have come forward to do this kind of thing, and it's wonderful. It's a testament to the power of community organizers and to the worthiness of volunteerism. And I just want to acknowledge the proclamation that the mayor gave, which we really, really appreciate. I also wanted to acknowledge the support of past mayors, including Rob Bouvier, Jonathan Harris, and Scott Slifka, along with Mayor Sherry Cantor for their support and encouragement. But this has really been a wonderful experience. We've built 6 soccer fields where there were none. And this was also done not just by one person, but by a whole group of people, including Dodie Mendel, Jim Capides, Mario Gilardini, Paul Sierra, Steve Wolbert, Beth Grieco, Carolyn McKenna, Meg Murphy, Marie Baker, Ethan Goldman, Carrie O'Brien, Mick Darcy, Meredith Kaplan, Tom Binder, Wynn Seymour, Rob Berman, and of course, Paul Glover. All of those people were board members or are current board members of Field of Dreams, and I just want to thank all of them for their support. It's encouraging. I want to encourage all of our town residents, if you have a dream, to find people who share that dream, and you can make magic. And with this donation of $70,000, we will be closing our foundation. There are going to be some residual, couple $100 coming in as we close up, but we are requesting that this amount of funds be appropriated to a new capital account for the purposes of helping fund the reconstruction of the lower field at Whiting Lane Park. That includes stripping, regrading, irrigating, and installing sod. That project is currently underway, and they're waiting for these funds. So we are delighted to donate $70,000 to the town of West Hartford. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubino Turco. I mean, this has been really, you have been involved in this for so long, and it must be very, very rewarding to see all that came out of this, really this dream. And we've met so many fabulous people through the process committed, and it really is an example of what people can do and an inspiration. So thank you again for your involvement, your leadership, your commitment to seeing this through. And I want to thank all of the people that have the leadership from the board, but so many of the donors and many of the players that have enjoyed it, including some of us right here. So thank you again so much. This is really a community achievement and a beautiful story. So, and with that, we will go again to just a unanimous consent vote. Is there any objection to adoption? Seeing none, motion is adopted, and thank you very much for everything. Then the next resolution is, yes, Mr. Dodge.
Prior to you calling the vote, Councilor Lee had indicated, I think they wish to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're not on my, I'm sorry. Mr. Gold, go ahead. I didn't think we could hear you. I didn't think we could hear you. I'm not hearing you yet, so. No, we can't hear you. Sorry, Mr. Gold, we can't hear you. Frustrating, sorry. Okay, Mr. Dodge, what do I do?
I would say, because I know Councilor Gold's microphone has been having issues for a while, he might want to use the call-in number. Great minds think alike, so we can wait for him to call in. I think I see his number coming on now.
Yeah, but he's going to have to sign off.
Dryda, can you unmute his device?
I've gone ahead and muted all of the devices.
Can I be heard now?
Yes, we can hear you now, Mr. Gold.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I really just wanted to be heard to make sure I could be heard. So thank you for that opportunity. And I also wanted to thank Helen Rubino Turcotte for her presentation and putting forth the amount of effort that she's done through the years. It's truly commendable, and I wanted to thank her for all those efforts. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gold. Echo, echo, echo. Absolutely. Thank you again. All right, and seeing no objection, a motion has passed. And again, thank you so much. Next resolution, declaring the 19th day of June as Juneteenth Independence Day. I move adoption, but before we proceed with any discussion, there is a substitute resolution in board docs. If there's no objection, I would like to move to amend with the substitute, and then we will proceed with the discussion of the resolution as amended. And just to describe, the amendment was simply, there was a typo, actually a spelling error, and then there was a couple of changes by the town historian. It was a West Hartford reference, and then another historical reference. So, and the council is in possession of a red line version that the Corporation Council sent earlier today. There were minor changes, but didn't change any of the resolutions. It added a whereas and a typo, and a couple, and one more phrase, I think. Is there any objection to amending the resolution? Okay, seeing none, there being no objection, the resolution is amended. And now discussion on Juneteenth. I will just start by saying that this past June 19th, there was there were residents that came forward, Adrian's Billings Smith primarily, requesting that the town, asking really what the town was going to do. And we didn't have anything planned for this day. And I just want to, and then there was this grassroots kind of effort to do a program and share what this day means to America. And so I just want to say that just to give a very, very brief history of Juneteenth, it's the oldest nationally celebrated commemoration of the ending of slavery in the United States. Dating back to 1865, it was on June 19th that the Union soldiers, led by Major General Gordon Granger, landed in Galveston, Texas, with news that the war had ended and that the enslaved were now free. Now, that note was 2.5 years after President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation, which had become official on January 1st, 1863. The Emancipation Proclamation had little impact on the Texans due to the minimal number of Union troops to enforce the new executive order. However, the surrender of General Lee in April of 1865 and the arrival of General Granger's regiment, the forces were finally strong enough to influence and overcome the resistance. But the order read, the people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired laborer. And so since that time, it was actually celebrated in Texas first. A range of activities have been provided from all different kinds of storytelling, prayer services, barbecuing, baseball, picnics, guest speakers, education, self-improvement programs. And so the thought is that more time is better to plan and to engage with constituencies throughout our community to celebrate Juneteenth in a way that deserves it the way it deserves, rather than sort of ad hoc and sort of last minute. We need to make sure that we reserve this on our calendars. We have programming. Maybe there's either, I don't know what kind of support is needed, but we are going to provide similar support that we do for other holidays, Martin Luther King, etc. So this is as important a holiday as there is in American history, and so I just really think that it's time for us. And the proclamation really spells out the really challenging history that the United States has with the slavery. But the reference to West Hartford in 1776, the West Division's Lemuel Haynes, in his essay "Liberty Further Extended, or Free Thoughts on the Illegality of Slave Keeping," proclaimed that an African may justly challenge and has an undeniable right to his liberty. And that's our own, from our own history. And we all know slavery in Connecticut ended in 1848, but the North benefited from slavery for a very long time economically. So beyond that date of 1848. So we are proclaiming that now therefore be it resolved by the Town Council of West Hartford that the 19th of June in each year is hereby declared to be Juneteenth Independence Day in the town of West Hartford, and in commemoration and celebration of the end of African slavery in the United States of America. And be it further resolved that the town manager consult with community stakeholders, including but not limited to scholars, historians, civil rights leaders, in order to develop activities and events to commemorate and celebrate Juneteenth Independence Day. Not that the town manager will control it, but he will consult, and we will make sure that there is a formal place in our town and our institutionalized in our town to make sure the celebration is comprehensive and inclusive and on our calendars. So, and with that, any further comments, discussion? Mr. Gold.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, Lee Gold. I too want to echo the sentiment that you've eloquently expressed in terms of the importance of this day. And specifically, I really want to point out something that is unique and local to us, which is Lemuel Haynes. He was a significant patriot of West Hartford during the colonial times, through the Revolutionary War, and into the infancy of our great country, the United States. He was a Federalist and a supporter of government, and our second president, John Adams. He was actually born, and I'm not sure if people were aware of this, he was born of a mixed marriage. He was left orphaned and later married a white woman, Elizabeth, and had 10 biracial children. He commanded a pulpit of a Congregationalist church using reason and rational thought to speak out against the institution of slavery, a blight on our country. He said, and to paraphrase, that liberty is equally important to a black man as it is to a white one. He never lost sight of his views, even as the country took a more partisan political landscape with Thomas Jefferson and Jeffersonian Republicans coming in. Something we all need to embrace in solving our collective present problems. It's important to remember our history, both good and bad. Acknowledging Juneteenth is an important step and a significant step in that direction, helping all of our citizens to be recognized and recognize the positives our country has to offer. So I'm happy that this is happening and being a little more organized than a grassroots event, but I'm glad that it did happen and we can recognize and honor someone local of West Hartford as we're honoring Juneteenth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gold, for that information and sharing that history. We are proud. He is a proud founding father of West Hartford and the United States and the country. Thank you so much. Ms. Blanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. What a beautiful birthday gift, right? Something that I can remember on this day that we passed this resolution. And thank you, Councilor Gold, for that historical information. This is beautiful. This is a long time coming, and I totally agree that we need to use this time to educate all of us, everybody, because this is a time to come together and to acknowledge our past, but to go forward with our future, knowing that we can learn from it and make it better, not just for us, but for the generations that will follow. So this is a beautiful day. This is my birthday. So this is something that I'm always going to remember, that today, that this is what we did in terms of this resolution. So thank you, everybody sitting around this virtual screen. And thank you to West Hartford, because we've acknowledged where we've come from and we're embracing where we're going.
Thank you, Ms. Blank, so much. That means a lot, and it is so important, and we have to keep improving ourselves, and this is a really important step. So, thank you for those wonderful comments, and yeah, thank you. All right, so we will go to roll call vote. Ms. LeBreau. Oh, any other? I'm sorry, I don't see any hands up, but I didn't. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate it. Just have some prepared remarks on this that I'd like to share. So I strongly support this resolution. I believe the Juneteenth holiday is appropriate because it is as much about freedom and dignity as it is about the closure of a horrific chapter in American history. But to me, I think the holiday is important because it reflects the exceptionalism contained in our founding documents. As the resolution points out, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the terror which can occur when those principles are not met. Frederick Douglass's remarkable speech of July 5th, 1852 is referenced in the resolution. And it is a scorcher, and it is long, and it is powerful, and I recommend to the public that they read it. It's really amazing. And one part of that speech, which isn't referenced in the resolution, because again, it's a very long speech, is as follows. Quote, "Allow me to say, in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country. There are forces in operation which must inevitably work the downfall of slavery. The arm of the Lord is not shortened, and the doom of slavery is certain. I therefore leave off where I began, with hope, while drawing encouragement from the Declaration of Independence, the great principles it contains, and the genius of American institutions. My spirit is cheered by the obvious tendencies of the age." end quote. And what I take Mr. Douglas to be saying is that at its core, American exceptionalism is about recognizing that all people, regardless of race, creed, or gender, have natural rights given by God and not a king, which are protected by our founding documents. No one has the power to take them away. And to me, Juneteenth is a holiday that allows us to reflect upon the dark sin that occurs when American exceptionalism is not honored by its leaders and people. But it is also a holiday that allows us to celebrate our God-given rights, a victory over forces which oppress them, and a realization that transgressing the very spirit of American exceptionalism, human dignity, the power of freedom and liberty, will never have staying power in America and will always be defeated over the course of this shared American experiment. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. That was really beautiful. Thank you very much. All right. Anybody else have any comments? Mr. Sweeney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I wanted to give you and the town staff a lot of credit for making the event in June happen. But I think there's just a few other people. I know Adrian is watching right now, and her work on getting this done was Herculean at the time during the middle of COVID, and we appreciate her. But I think one of the people that one of the big things that's also happened in recent years is the state's move on African American curriculum, and Dr. Regina Haskins and her role in her words on the Juneteenth event, celebration were moving and powerful to everyone who's there. But also want to say thank you to Carol and her words on that day. That was such a beautiful day, along with former Councilwoman Judy Casperson, Lorna Ferguson Thompson, and Representative Tammy Exum, who also was there. But just a big shout out to the whole team here for making one today happen. It's a big event for our town, but I know a lot of people brought this to where we are right now, and I appreciate everyone's input on the proclamation. And just really, we're really lucky to live in this community where everyone is participating in this way and giving the input. But thank you to everyone who got this to this point, and it's a great day, and another opportunity to say happy birthday to Carol.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeney. And I also, Earl also spoke with Tammy that day, and it was a group effort. There was no question. But Adrian was the spark. I will say that. So, and that's appreciated. Thank you so much. All right. So with that, I think any other comments? Okay, we will go to roll call, Ms. LeBrook.
Ms. Blank?
Yes.
Ms. Cantor?
Yes.
Mr. Davidoff?
Yes.
Ms. Hay?
Yes.
Mr. Gold?
Yes.
Ms. Kerrigan?
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney?
Yes.
Mr. Winograd?
Yes.
And Mr. Williams?
Yes.
It's unanimous. Madam Mayor, may we go back to Councilor Kerrigan so she can put her vote on the resolution?
I was just going to do that, but I was also just going to say thank you for your thoughtful remarks on that proclamation. Yes, Ms. Kerrigan, the vote
on the schedule of fees for various recreational facilities.
Yes.
Thank you. It is unanimous.
Thank you. Okay. All right. With that, we have next item and our last item of the, oh no, I lost it, is announcements. And that would be me. Okay. As the town manager already said, and many of you have heard me say multiple times, Thanksgiving needs to be celebrated, and you all know this. But speaking to the public and everyone else, again, we can't say it enough. Thanksgiving and ultimately the rest of the holiday season will need to be celebrated differently this year. By order of the governor, private gatherings of more than 10 people are prohibited, but anyone outside of your household is not recommended. And if you do decide to have guests in your house, don't eat with them. Just wear a mask, say a hi and then say goodbye, or open windows for circulation. This is a very contagious disease. The Commissioner of Public Health commented to me, she's just never seen anything quite so contagious. So it really is challenging. My own family, as you probably all know, we usually have 35 to 40 people. And like a core of 30, but usually it runs about 40. And this year, as of last year, we were planning to have that, and we will have 3 this year. So, the shopping list is less, and the pressures in some way are less. But we're going to be Zooming most of the day. We're going to be running the Manchester roadways virtually, and dropping off packages of food for elderly relatives. And so I can't stress enough how important it is to really stay tough throughout these next few months until we start to see, I think, a little more light. And as vaccines are starting to roll out, we really need to bridge it with being smart, wearing a mask in public. Wherever you are in public, just wear your mask, wash your hands thoroughly, frequently, 20 seconds, and make sure you physical distance with people outside of your home. Most spread is happening in family gatherings, or informal private get-togethers. So we know that there are better days ahead, and we just need to take care of each other so we can celebrate those better days together, healthy and together. Please register for the COVID Alert Connecticut app. This is an app that it stays anonymous, but you get an alert on your phone if you've been near somebody that has tested positive for COVID. So all you will get is an indication that somebody, if you register, and you say that you've been positive. If you are, then everybody that you've been with will get. And the same thing with anybody you're near. Same thing with you being around anybody that tests positive. This is how South Korea largely contained the virus. This was very effective, but there were large numbers of people that registered in their country, and so it became a very effective way for them to isolate and then contain. Obviously, do more in-depth contact tracing. This is not a replacement for contact tracing. We have about, I think, 20% of our residents, I think it's 16%, 18%, something like that had signed up. We need to get to a more intense number for this really to be effective. But again, it's proven, it's worked in other countries, and I encourage you to do it. For instructions on how to download the app, please go to ct.gov/COVID-alert-CT. Stroll Your Own Way begins November 28th. The annual holiday stroll, typically held on the first Thursday of December, is canceled this year. Instead, residents and visitors are encouraged to stroll their own way over a 4-week period by taking part in lots of activities, including outdoor concerts, rooftop movie night, voting on your favorite holiday decorated window, artwork by local artists, and a Santa selfie station, just to name a few. The Town of West Hartford Chamber of Commerce, Blueback Square, have gathered up lots of activities for you to enjoy the holiday season. A schedule can be found on the Chamber's website, so visit that website, www.whchamber.com. Stroll Your Own Way 2020. Are there any other announcements for the public? Okay, so I would like to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss the selection of a site or the lease, sale, or purchase of real estate, and adjourn immediately thereafter. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Dodge, yes.
I just want to make clear that although you're making one motion, this is to discuss 2 separate transactions that are unrelated.
Okay.
And so just for the sake of convenience, and because we're in the virtual format, we're just going to make one motion to go into executive session, but we will address both of those matters.
Okay. Seeing no objection, we will, right, to those two items. We will go into executive session, and the public portion of the meeting is going to be adjourned in 1 minute. I just want to wish my colleagues, town staff, all the residents of West Hartford a happy, healthy, safe Thanksgiving. Please take precautions, stay healthy, and I wish you, again, just much happiness and peace on this wonderful holiday. So, and with that, the meeting, without objection, the meeting is adjourned, and we are going into executive session. I'd like to invite the town manager, the town